Another disappointing defeat for the Addicks. Some more questionable officiating, and a lot of questions to answer heading into the first international break of the championship season. Hi, everybody. Welcome in to the 12th episode of the From the Vive Flow podcast. My name is Callum Alston. This is your QPR3 Charlton Athletic 1 post-match review. Hi to Sam and Paul, who are in the comments. An immensely disappointing Saturday afternoon. Apologies if I sound again a little bit. I'm still not feeling particularly well. So forgive me as I sort of work my way through this game. I mean, it's such a difficult game, I think, to analyze because I don't think the performance was necessarily awful. And weirdly, it was three of our most consistent players, plus one who's sort of in and out, who I thought were actually the worst players on the day. Right? You combine that with yet another infuriating refereeing decision, which I'm going to disagree with the guys at Charlton Live about in a minute. And then you compound that with Nathan Jones at the end of the game coming out and saying basically exactly what I said on the post-match last week, which is I didn't think it was a foul. It was too far from the ball. It turns out it sounds like PGMOL or the EFL have come back to Charlton and said, yeah, the goal should have stood. So, 2 weeks, two tough decisions, a frustrating afternoon. The concourse was terrible at QPR. One of the bars wasn't open. The Valley Floyd podcast now is just turning into Callum moaning about concessions, I realise. But let's talk about the game. First 20 minutes, and I said this on the pod, right? On would have been Thursday, wouldn't it? You have to start strongly against a team that's struggling, right? And you have to shoot. The two things we did not do in that game was shoot and start strongly. We looked really out of shape at times in the first sort of 20 minutes. I know Paul must be. I know. There is a 2-week break, though. So I get to have a chat about loyalty points and Valley Gold, which I can't wait this week. That's going to be a rocking podcast. No, but this isn't it. They say you should talk these things out. I was suffering some minor head loss yesterday afternoon, but calmed down a bit today. But we didn't shoot enough against the keeper who looked rocky, right? Looked dodgy. Dropped a couple of balls into the box. The goal never should go in. He's out in no man's land. And we just didn't test him, right? We had one shot off the bar from Miles Lieben. Other than that, first half was pretty dominant from Queen's Park Rangers. I disagree with Nathan Jones saying after 10 minutes we controlled it. I think it's the classic thing. Actually, this is the first game where we had more possession and we actually looked more incompetent going forward than we did when we had 40% of the possession, right? As we did at Bristol. So it's hard to watch a game like that and not sort of overreact because that QPR team was there for the taking, right? It was absolutely there to be beaten. Once we score, their first goal, should the keeper do better? Yes. I made a point. I've seen it back and it's worse than I thought it was in the ground. But it is kind of right at him. I think what he's done is he's hedged his bets and gone, he's going to try and knock it across me. So he's gone down a little bit too early. And I think that, yeah, Paul, I thought we'd go for the throat from the off and said it was them catching us. Sounds my friends. It's true. Then we got Sam in here going, that was probably the most disappointing we didn't take our chances yet again in front of goal. Yeah, I think that you're both accurate. Um, I thought we'd come out on the front foot. They've just lost 7-1. They'll be fragile. That home crowd could go a bit toxic, and I think it did after we scored the equaliser. But that first 20 minutes, the QPR crowd, I thought really got behind their side. I think they realised they needed that sort of positivity, and we just didn't react. Right? They came at us. They were direct. They were aggressive. I think Nathan said in one of the post matches that QPR have actually been quite passive, so they've been sort of more focused on defensive shape, which is a bit weird when you lose 7-1, but they've been more focused on sort of sitting back, holding and trying to hit on the counter. And for that first 20 minutes, they decided to press us, and it was very similar. I always use this as a reference to one of Nathan Jones's best managerial performances, I think, is that 3-3 we got at Bolton when he first came in, when he went man for man, and we all thought we were going to put 11 men behind the ball, right? I think June Stefan did that to him yesterday, right? We thought they're going to try and sit, they're going to try and take the sting out of it. And really, they pressed us, and we didn't cope with it. We're not great on the ball, and I think more teams are going to do that. And that's what I meant in the intro, and I said there's some questions to be answered. Going back to that first goal, because I sort of came off track there, I think the keeper's hedged his bets. I think the keeper's gone, he's going to knock it across me. I think he may have even been thinking about Kone coming on the front post. Maybe that was the shot. And he's gone down. And he should have done better because it's gone right at him. But I think it's a little bit more difficult than just saying, somebody else would have saved it. We'll get into the goalkeeping chat a little bit later. But it was such an avoidable goal. And the thing that actually annoyed me was, the keeper not saving it. I think it's going to irritate everybody when it kind of bounces off you like that. We all think you can do better. But was Josh Edwards stood almost on their box as the ball goes into our net. He's so out of position on that breakaway, and I don't understand why. Right? I don't know what he's trying to do up there. The keeper gets it, he's thrown it. Sprint. Right? And I've never been someone that comes in there and goes, I don't think players are trying. I don't think that's what it was. I think he just gets himself completely out of position, at which point he can't get back. Right? So why spend the energy running to basically the halfway line? But it looked really bad. You've left Tyrese Campbell on an island, and he's not a defender. And it comes across, and Mario Bell loses his marker. Lloyd Jones comes across, plays in the middle, all by himself, takes the shot. Keeper probably should do better. It's just a massive mess, right? And Nathan Jones don't normally concede goals like that, right? We don't concede goals where they're sort of completely in the wrong place all over the pitch, But throughout the game, the midfield wasn't really around. Greg Coventry in the middle, I think, actually played reasonably well. But if it wasn't running down the middle, they were just completely bypassing us. And the centre backs, and I commented this on Charlton Live this morning, actually. But my God, Kane Ramsey and Lloyd Jones looked as if they were Sunday leaguers after they'd had about 7 tequila slammers the night before. Honestly, it was like Bambi on ice skates between the two of them over the course of that game. Right? Lloyd Jones losing headers, Kane Ramsey going with his foot when he should go with his head. Just looking completely out of it, completely out of sorts. And it's a weird one because when we started to kind of get back into the game, they look comfortable again. And then at the end, they've resorted back to God knows what those two are doing, right? Amari Bell wasn't, I think was the best of a bad bunch in that back six. And I'm going to back five, I guess. I'm going to take Rob Apter out of it because I don't really think he's a fullback. But, he loses his man on the first goal. And you're just kind of sat there going, nobody is organising it. Nobody's, and I gave Kaminsky credit after the Southend preseason game. I said he was shouting at defenders. You could hear him. It was great. But I don't know what happened on that goal. No, nobody was organising it. And then the heads dropped. I don't know if anybody else saw that. The goal goes in, the heads dropped. Right? That's not a Nathan Jones side. And that was my point in the preview pod about that first goal mastering, because I think that we thought we can't score. We can't score. Right? And there's a lot of finger pointing, a lot of it's your fault, and I don't like seeing that. And I don't think you see that too much from Nathan Jones' sides. And that was a bit of a concern. So I got this from Sam, who agreeing with me. Thanks, mate. The whole team seems to be out of sorts to take responsibility. At times I think we are. Right? At times I think we are becoming a little bit like that. Ball goes in and we're sort of all shouting at each other, and I don't know if that was a shape problem, but I can't imagine any manager in the history of the world has set up a defense quite like that, right? Even those Marcelo Bielsa teams that couldn't defend, I don't think he would set up a centre back trio that badly. So clearly something's gone wrong in the communication here. Clearly the gap between midfield and defence is too big. Clearly there are issues, and that can happen, right? The one plus about looking at it and going, if our four worst performers are Lloyd Jones, Kane Ramsey, Josh Edwards, and let's say Tyrese Campbell, because I know we're going to get there later. Well, three of those players have been, three of those players have been our most consistent over the last 18 months. Excluding Connor Coventry from that situation. So you think, yeah, it probably will be better against the team from down the road in a couple of weeks' time. I've got a couple of comments here. We've got, apart from a couple of blocks and the bowls and the loft, their crowd was the epitome of a sing when you're winning. They were turning until the second QPR goal. They were. And we'll come to that in a second. We'll talk about the bizarre app to goal and, their crowd really sort of coming out with it. Thanks from Packworld. Seemed to lack that edge yesterday. The screwed well and true turn, but we lacked the ability to capitalise. Absolutely, we did. Wrong ball, wrong run. Wrong finish. We just didn't challenge the keeper enough. Right, this is a keeper that practically threw one in the net for us, and we still didn't really test him. Right? Did he have a save to make outside of? It's a little bit like I always think of it like in a game that wasn't massively dissimilar, minus the fact that he looked completely uncomfortable doing it. The Man in the playoff one, where everyone thinks, "Oh, he was all right." And I mean, if you take the chucking the ball in the net for his sort of thing, he came for crosses. He did what he was supposed to do, but outside of the goal, he didn't have a save to make. Right, and so you think, "Oh, he played okay." He didn't really. He was actually looked petrified for half the game, but we just didn't capitalize. You have these corners and these crosses, right? Get into him, right? Make him uncomfortable. We didn't do that, and that's really disappointing. Echoes of Pastigate, Lloyd and Kenner pedigrees, thoroughbred. Some dodgy meds in their nose bags. Yeah, you know what? I'm only bringing up the Kane and Lloyd. They're not because I think that right. Those are two of our best players, right? Nobody is going to say. Nobody's going to say anything about Lloyd and Kane beyond the fact that I thought they were both dreadful yesterday, and I think that you have to sometimes call that out. Lloyd going to striker was very weird and didn't work at all, but it happens. I actually thought Josh Edwards was worse than both as well. I thought Josh Edwards was terrible on the day, but again, that's another consistent player. Got this. We'll get into the goalkeeping in a little bit, Packwell, because I don't necessarily disagree. But we'll come back to that. Tavern Pie, prefer your tequila slammer idea. It did look a little bit. If anyone's ever watched like a Sunday League game where you clearly have one guy out there, clearly it's not in a great place. I guess we've all been on a Sunday morning, right? And clearly you're not in a position to be putting on a pair of football boots at 10 a.m. You get out there and everything just goes horribly wrong. That was kind of what Kane Ramsey looked like yesterday, and that happens, right? You can hear it sort of in the fact that I'm laughing at it. I should be serious about it. I don't worry too much about, I'm not going to sit and worry about Kane Ramsey. I'm not going to sit and worry about Lloyd Jones. I just think in terms of balance, when we get to other players who are far more blamed for far more things, that's that's wrong. So I just think it's important to note that they were both also terrible. And we'll talk about in the second goal as well, where they both, it was slightly embarrassing. From Sam, I meant to mention the fans around me yesterday. We think Nathan found the management handbook left by Curbs. Only use plan A, late sub, take wrong players off and play hoofball. Don't necessarily disagree. I think Nathan Jones got that wrong yesterday. But I wonder how much of that was Nathan Jones getting that wrong and how much of it was players just having a bad day. I think that it's a difficult one, right? I think the Rob Apter thing, he came off because he was blowing, right? He was knackered. That's why we're talking about getting a right wing back in. We need a right wing back desperately. That's pretty obvious. We cannot keep moving Tyrese Campbell, who himself was knackered, out to right wing back and thinking that's going to solve any sort of problems. So we need to get a right wing back. If we don't get a right wing back in, the rest of it is pretty. We're going to have the same problem recurring over and over and over again. It sounds like Nathan was saying they will have one, which is good. So we just need to get that done. We've got set pieces screamed when they worked for the first few games when we had Innis and other teams identified it, and we I'm not going to say that for the actual pod. that word, but yeah, let's just say the set pieces were not good. I mean, it wasn't necessarily even the way we're attacking them; as the deliveries were god awful. Right, and I include that in my sort of Josh Edwards quote unquote criticism. Right, some of the crosses were just genuinely terrible. Not beating the first man. We did beat the first man. It was right at the goalkeeper. But you're adding to a goalkeeper who's got no confidence. You're adding to his confidence by giving him 7 or 8 touches, right, before he has to do anything difficult, right? So I'm sort of, I'm in two minds about it. In terms of in terms of that, I don't think we necessarily did play hoofball, Sam. That's one thing I will disagree with. Football is subjective, of course, so you may completely disagree with me. But I don't think we were necessarily trying to play hoofball. And if we are going to play hoofball, for goodness sakes, can we get Macaulay Gillespie back in there? Because at least the hoofs, went somewhere. With Murray Bell, they seem to just go out of play. So I don't think that was intentional, because you wouldn't play hoofball with a player like Amari Bell. I think it was just that we couldn't get through their midfield, which brings up really big problems because they only played 2 midfielders and were dominating us with 2 midfielders back there, in there, and we had 3. So there was some shape issues, which I think you can blame the manager for. There's some player issues. The less said about the third goal, the better for all of us. But we got the goal that we scored to get back to 1-1 to kind of get back onto the match sort of journey. I mean, I'm not sure whether Rob Apter got very, very lucky, right? And he may have done. I'm not sure if it was intentional. And I don't know what their goalkeeper was doing on it either, right? So I think you look at it and you go, okay, our keeper's made a mistake, their keeper's made a mistake, probably. You go, okay, it's 1-1. And then we were pretty dominant, I thought, for the next sort of 15 minutes or so. And this was the point Pat was making earlier. We didn't capitalize on that, right? We didn't seem to we didn't take control. I think a second goal, as Paul was referencing, I think if we got in a second goal, that crowd would have turned. As soon as the goal went in, you could see them sort of thinking, "Oh God, here we go again." Especially if you were sort of in like block Y5 where I was, or like Y4, where you could see straight over to one of their main sort of stand. You could see their fans going, "Oh dear." But we didn't capitalize, right? We had the things Harris Campbell went through, just fall over, right? You just fall over, that's a penalty. Although none the ref yesterday, I'm not sure it would have been. But if you fall over, he's swiped, he's missed, he's clearly hit you in the foot. Down you go, right? He stayed on his feet. You could argue he should have played that to Miles. I think that's a more difficult pass than people are saying it is. Maybe I just haven't seen the right angle. I think if you turn to play, you're 5 yards from goal, you have a right to have a shot. It actually was a relatively okay save, but actually it was right at his foot. So you're kind of looking at it and you're kind of, okay, the goal's just not going to come. The goal's just not going to come. And then the thing that drove me absolutely bananas, and I think it probably drove everybody else slightly mad, is how on earth Mbenge did not get a second yellow card for bringing Charlie Callum down. First half, it's a clear yellow card. Second half, it's the same foul. He's committed the same foul. Doesn't get a yellow card, right? And instead of playing against 10 men, this is where I disagree with something I heard on Charlton Live. This is what I heard on Charlton Live this morning. I disagree with it. It was, I don't think 10 men. I don't think that changes. I think playing against 10 men completely changes the game. Right? Playing against 10 men massively changes the game. I think sometimes the stats, we're not good against 10 men. It's quite often players were getting, we're getting sent off in League One the 83rd minute. Right? This was 65 minutes in. Right? 67 was it, something like that? That's almost half an hour against a team whose crowd was really nervous at that point. It was really quiet in Loftus Road after we scored. Right, we were dominating the game, and going down to 10 men for QPR. I think we could have scored. Playing against 10 men, and I think that crowd would have gotten very, very agitated, and instead, nothing happened. So, for some reason, it was the linesman that gave it too, because he starts smacking the side of his ear, which is him trying to let the referee know you've missed a foul here. How he's missed it, I don't know. But then how the linesman's not gone to him and gone, that's a second yellow. Just once again, EFL officiating just completely baffles me. It's supposed to get better as you go up the pyramid. It feels like it gets worse, right? And I feel slightly screwed over in the same way that I think Fulham fans were screwed over after the weekend, right? Yeah, I mean, Kitchen's excuse for not giving the second header was completely disingenuous. What do you mean it wasn't a? What was it? What was it? I think it wasn't a good enough chance. Basically, it wasn't a dangerous enough chance. What do you mean? He's outside the 18-yard box. He's on the edge of the 18-yard box. Of course it's a. He's also past him, right? So it's one of those things you don't get that. And then of course, Mbenge is the one that wins it off Tyrese Campbell, for their second goal. This goal is the one, maybe the worst we have conceded under Nathan Jones, excluding Harry Eistead's horrendous goal kick away at Northampton. Honestly, yeah, it was a cynical trip, Paul. It was a cynical trip. I don't understand how that's not been given. But beyond that, and Mbenge then wins the ball because, of course, it's absolute sod's law off Tyrese Campbell. Hey, by the way, there's a clear push in the back on Tyrese Campbell there, right? Not when he actually wins the ball, but the first engagement, you can see Mbenge's got two hands and he kind of pushes forward. Tyrese Campbell falls over. That's a foul, right? So was he weak? Yeah. I'm not gonna sort of say he was strong in sort of shielding the ball. He wasn't, right? Was he weak? Yeah. Should have Mbenge been on the pitch? No, right? Clearly not, right? But my God. My God. Firstly, it's a foul. Fall over like a sack of potatoes. Secondly, I had it earlier. Can I need to make sure I knew it? It's Sototo, isn't it? Is the name of the player. I always forget his name. He's a good player, actually. But he takes the ball and he literally runs through the entirety of our defense without being engaged, gets into the box, right? Keeper's coming, sort of, and I will agree he wasn't particularly strong in that moment. Keeper's coming and has to step back because he thinks he might cross it because there's another man coming across. Kane Ramsey, Sototo goes around Lloyd Jones like Lloyd Jones has had about 4 shots of tequila before playing football, right? Honestly, watch the highlights back. He doesn't engage, and then proceeds to spin around like he's part of some, Crash Bandicoot or whatever video game. Kane Ramsey comes across, doesn't deal with it. Amari Bell tries to tackle, ends up deflecting the ball into the back of his net, leaving Kaminsky with no chance anyway. Right? It is an absolute disaster of a goal. Right? And it's a great run, right? But every single part of that goal could have been prevented. Every single part of it. I suppose we can't, like says, Kitchen didn't commit any massive bloopers in the playoff final. He didn't actually, to be fair. But you just watch that and you just got to... you listen to the story of that second goal and go, huh? How on earth has that got... And that when Nathan watches it back, I'm sure will absolutely enrage him, right? Because when it happened live, it was bad. When I saw it on the replay, it was honestly one of the worst goals I've seen Charlton concede since the days of Hector and Thomas. Right? It was god awful. It was Dumb and Dumber out there. A centre back at times yesterday. And then we moved Lloyd Jones up front because we needed some heading ability, I guess, despite having Miles up front for some reason. Miles is clearly blowing at this point, and Nathan doesn't make the change. Right? And so you're at the thing, you're going, if you're all the way famous thinking, I know I played poorly on Tuesday because he did play poorly on Tuesday. You're not even giving me a chance here. And I think that there was some spaces that we could have, you look at Richard Dunn at right back, right? It's a really good player, Richard Dunn, their captain. But he's not a right back, right? And he's slow. So Richard Dunn is Jimmy Dunn. I always forget which one. There's 2 of them, aren't there? Richard Dunn. One of them is a centre back, used to be at City, and the other is the QPR captain. But he's not a centre back. Right? And so it's just like, there's some pace on that side, attack him, right? You can get around him. We did get around him a couple of times, right? But playing man up to him, they just put 2 big centre backs on Miles and said, well, you can't win the header. And Lloyd Jones comes forward and they do exactly the same thing. You've got Saito had half the pitch to go, was allowed to run free. It was absolutely bananas, Paul. Absolutely bananas, right? When you listen back and you hear how that goal went in, right? And we'll never understand what Lloyd Jones is doing in terms of backpedaling. I'm actually, to be fair, and I gave him a bit of credit, I'm not sure what Conor Coventry is doing. Where on earth are you? Right? Greg Dock's on the other side. I'm going to forgive Greg Dockey is playing left centre mid, right? But that was a terrible goal. And the third one we're pushing up, right? But Kane Ramsey again, he goes with his foot to, and maybe again, maybe I'm just looking at it from the wrong angle. I've never played centre back. It was never the position I played. But what on earth was that? And so you can see what I mean by making the joke about looking as if they'd had a really good night out the night before, right? Like, just baffling decisions by players who know a lot better. It's not who should know a lot better; it's who do know a lot better. And so Kone goes through. He takes a bad touch, but the fact he takes a bad touch actually helps him because it wrong foots Kaminsky. He ends up probably far too high out of his box. Kone just whacks it past him. If he takes a good touch, actually probably the goalkeeper in a better spot. But anyone having a moan about a 1-on-1, I think is just being slightly ridiculous. But just the goals we can see were unavoidable. We created some chances. A lot of them are half chances. Miles' chance is a lot more difficult than it looks. I think Toes Campbell had a header that the defender just about beat him to, but it didn't look as if he was going to get great purchase on it anyway. So look, it wasn't great from everybody. I really am struggling to find a player that I thought was good. Apter maybe, but he was bad for 25 minutes. Coventry maybe, but I've just said on the second goal we should have done better. Doherty wasn't great. Jimmy Dunn, that's what it is. It's Jimmy Dunn. I apologise. I said it was Richard Dunn. Jimmy Dunn against some pelters when I was found on social, like the keeper. We just didn't test him. Well, no, it's because he's not a fullback. He's not quick enough to play fullback, Paul. Right? That's what I'm saying is you need to put pace on that side and attacking. They don't have any fullbacks, right? They've said this. Instead, we focused on the other side, which in itself is not a problem because their left back situation is not great. But we just didn't help ourselves. We didn't dominate the middle of the park, which is something they've really struggled with. We didn't shoot, right? We just looked a little bit confused as to what we were trying to do. I think we rocked up a little bit arrogantly, if I'm honest. I think we rocked up and thought, yeah, we play really well against Leicester. We'll play really well here. And I don't think we changed enough. And I think that's probably come back to bite us. If I just look at a couple of performances, then, as I said, Kaminsky should have done better on the first goal. Second goal, I actually think it's a bit harsh to blame him for. The angle probably could have been better. He probably could have been a little bit more decisive. But to be honest with you, with the other three, doing what they were doing, I think it's difficult on him. Third one, it's a 1-on-1. It's pretty. Doesn't really matter whether it goes in or not. But we have had a couple of moments now with Kaminsky that are a little bit, that you can look at and be a little bit concerned. I still think that he made a good save in the first half, free kick. Even then, there was a tiny bit of panic in sort of trying to understand what was going on. I guess part of the problem with that is you've got a 6'6" striker you want in the wall to block things, but then the keeper can't see. Yeah, Costello would have been better to use to it. Maybe just to hold on to the ball a bit. Maybe a commentary Costello thing, but Costello was so bad on Tuesday night. And I said this after the cut match. I'm not going to go back and sort of berate Nathan for doing something I wouldn't, for doing the thing I would have done, which is kept the same 11. We just didn't show up, really. Bell, first goal, poor. Second goal, not great. Lloyd Jones, second goal, absolutely dreadful. And at moments just lost headers that you normally win to Kone, that sort of thing. Cam Ramsey, absolutely terrible. There's no way around that. Sorry. He's a player I really like. He's from literally just down the road from me. Right? I have a huge amount of love for Kane Ramsey, and I'm not trying to single him out, but that was really poor. Apter, okay, scored the goal. Josh Edwards, poor. First goal, especially. Coventry, okay. Again, second goal, maybe could have done better. I think it may have been because he wasn't expecting Tyrese Campbell to lose the ball and then couldn't recover because I think he's probably gone to the other side. Greg Doherty was okay. Nothing much. Didn't dominate. Couldn't get on the ball. This is the same problem we've always got. We've got Carey didn't do anything at all. But he'll probably start against Millwall because when Nibs came on, he also did absolutely nothing. Lee Byrne was okay. Maybe I'll give Lee Byrne a man of the match. Maybe I thought he was actually okay. And then we get to the one that I think probably has been the most sort of contentious, which is Tyrese Campbell. And I want to start this segment by being really, really careful. Where I was in my block, and I want to make it really clear, it was not the people around me necessarily. some of the comments that you hear about Tyrese Campbell are very, very, very close to lines that you shouldn't be crossing in. Good to see someone else thought that Kane Ramsey was gutted. Yeah, I mean, I think he knew he didn't play very well. um, the question then does coaches goes the goalkeeping situation. I don't think it's that, Sam. I think that it's. I don't think he went to get a great day at the office, but I think that can happen. But yeah, I mean, to go back to the point I was making, yeah. So, I want to make it really clear: this was not the people around me, and it's really important that you are able to criticize players as well, but with fans. And I think it's really important to say that I was having a couple of social media conversations with people I disagree with fundamentally, right, about goalkeepers and all the rest of it. But some people were saying, oh, we are supported by people who are this, that, and the other. Football's subjective. We're all had our opinions. I come on here and speak into a microphone. I like chatting to everybody and all the rest of it. But it doesn't mean my opinion is any more valid than anybody else's. And I'm not a football expert. I don't pretend to be. All right. So I suppose maybe I do pretend to be by coming on here, but I'm not an expert. I don't have any qualifications. I've got the same sort of experience as anybody else, and I think it's one of those things. It's like we should all have a right to an opinion. We should all stay together. We're all frustrated. We're all irritated. We're all annoyed. And I probably count the players in that as well. But some of the comments that I heard, say, not from the people next to me, not from the people in the row behind me, they're just approaching a line that we shouldn't be approaching, especially with one of our own young talents. Right? It's a kid that's been at the club since he was 9. I think we just need to be really, really careful that we don't end up, and this is not to be woke or anything like that, right? Not that I particularly care about those sorts of labels anyway. But we have to be really, really, really careful about what we say and how we say it, right? And I get it, football. There's alcohol involved. There's people that are frustrated. There are people who, for a lot of us, it's our release from the 5 days a week working and all the rest of it. But we have to just be a little bit careful with what we say, because I get it. He did come over. He did clap the fans, all the rest of it. But TC was gone before anybody else, and I think that there was some frustration, there was some upset. But some of the stuff, I think very much, and I fully agree with Mr. Gap on Charlton. Like, we have a need for a scapegoat at this club at times, and quite often it's an academy kid. And they quite often go on somewhere else and do okay and all the rest of it. And you look at some of the ones that have gone on, and maybe they don't all hit the heights of a Lookman or a Gomez or a Conser or a Pope. I know Pope wasn't actually technically academy, but you know what I mean. But we have to be, I think, just a little bit careful that we don't expect every academy kid to rip up every game, right? They're still young, right? And I question, as I said, I like Charlie Callum. I think there is a player in there. I think ultimately it will get going. But you look at the return. I mean, QPR paid what, 500 grand less than we did for Callum. We basically bought them a striker and gave them 500 grand. You know what I mean? Like, that front line, to me, the confidence is gone. I don't think a bunch of people getting on people's backs is necessarily helpful. And I think we have to be really, really careful with what we say. And I'm not going to repeat some of the things that I was hearing, but it makes anybody. I think it makes quite a lot of people quite uncomfortable. And so I just, I want to be really clear about that I don't agree with that. What I do agree with is I don't think Tyrese Campbell had a great game. Right? I don't. Right? He had an assist. Fair play to him. One of the weirdest goals you're ever going to see. But he's not, he wasn't great on the ball. He didn't hold the ball up particularly well. He didn't beat his man particularly often, right? At right wing back, it didn't work again. Again, we're putting a knackered Tyrese Campbell at right wing back because we have a Brian Apter who was absolutely blowing after an hour because he's not used to running up and down because he was a winger, right? So we need to get a wing back in. The second goal, he needs to be stronger or he needs to fall over. Don't do what he did, which was in between. But Tyrese Campbell is not the problem this season. It's not the reason we're not scoring. I understand, right? People want to see the end product. I do get that. right? But I just, I think we need to be really careful, and that's why I did the criticism of players in Lloyd and Josh and Kane, who we all think are wonderful, right? First, because I wanted to get that sort of out of the way and make it clear that I'm not scapegoating anyone, right? I've criticised the keeper as well. I've criticised Murray Bell today, right? I don't think anyone was great on Saturday, and I think it's important that we stick together, that we're allowed to have different opinions. But you look at that game after the international break, and we have to all be, I know it sounds cheesy and all this, but we need to be as one, right? We need to look at it. I think for the next 2 weeks, I think that, the excuses for the Nibs and the Kelmans and the other Affes of the world of less preseason time, whatever it is, that's over now, right? After these 2 weeks, we need to go, right? Because we've got 42 games to stay in this division, and it's so important that we're ready. I imagine Nathan Jones will have them shot out of a cannon against Millwall, right? And Millwall lost yesterday to Wrexham at home, right? They're not unbeatable. They're not impossible to play. They are unbeatable for us. I know it's a Millwall side, but we've got to approach that with confidence. We've got to get this body language out of the way. I think we hunch shoulders a lot. We look down a lot. We blame each other a lot. We need to, I think, cultivate a bit more of a team spirit, and I think that just comes with time, right? We've got 9 new players in, right? So we just need to, I think, have a stop, have a reset, right? It's a little bit difficult because we've got 4. We've got 4 players going off with Jamaica, which is a bit of a pain. Although fair play to them. But I think maybe Terry's getting away playing for Jamaica for a bit. Maybe I guess it's 3 players because Dixon's on loan, isn't it? It's only 3 players in the current squad. But it's probably good for Tyrese Campbell to get a change of scenery just for a couple of weeks and all the rest of it. But let's come back again, for the preview against Millwall and be together. There's one other piece of news I just want to talk about in a second. Let me just take these last couple of points. So from Paul, some people seem to be locked into or have been sucked into the narrative that TC is lazy, not good enough, doesn't really care. Firstly, he works hard. That's why we should have to absolutely 100% correct. And I did say this in the review of the Leicester game. This idea that he's lazy is a load of nonsense. Right? His body language at times isn't great, and I heard this morning as well, and I was listening to some of the other media. He's a pretty shy lad, right? Like, he's not a particularly demonstrative person. He's also a flair player, and flair players are incredibly infuriating. It just comes with the territory, right? If you look at it, right, and I use this just as an example, right? Some of the most irritating players are some of the most effective in terms of no one likes the fact that some players gesticulate or whatever. Look at Cole Palmer at times. His body language is awful, right? No one suggests he's not a great footballer. So I think there is an overlook at shoulders and body language and all the rest of it. But he's not a lazy player. He's not the strongest player. Maybe that's something you can look into. As I said, he's not infallible. He makes mistakes. He's not got all the finished product. But he's not, he's not awful. He's not lazy. And I think some of that just sort of needs to stop, personally. In regards to the transfer window, we need to add 3 or 4 players with experience in the Championship. I don't know if we're going to, Sam. I think part of the problem we've got is we've got 2 players who are injured that do, in Godden and Berry. Both have played a huge number of games at this level. My worry, and I said this on Charlton Live this morning, is we are very dependent on a 34-year-old coming back from a knee injury. And that doesn't always sound particularly promising. I suppose it's very minor, but any surgery is, comes with risks. And so I think that we just need to, I think we will get a player in. I don't know who it's going to be. I haven't been able to ascertain that, nor would I say it on the pod who it is. But it's pretty obvious it's going to be a wing back. And then I guess they might have a look and see if there's any loan players available. Beyond that. And we've got to get Goddens back and see what happens. Yeah, great combo last season. Tisa was shy. You'd be full on the other hand. Yes, I mean, this is a very good question. And we're approaching the end here, basically, because my laptop's about to run out, so I can't record for too much longer. And there's one other thing I want to talk about before I go. But we'll have a chat about Ibrahim maybe this week, because obviously it's an international break. I'll do a little pod on Wednesday or Thursday and just kind of chat through some club stuff. I'll have a moan about loyalty points and Valley Gold and all the rest of it, just because I know it's something that people have talked about. I want to talk about some of the ticketing situations in the EFL and some of the issues that we have there as well. So we'll do that. I like Fuller. I'm not sure. If you look at, I know people will use the Lookman comparison because I've used it myself. but he's a bit small, and I think in the Championship he might just be knocked around. And I think there's a really, really exciting player in there. He's got a 4.5-year contract, 4-year contract, whatever it is from now. There's no need to rush him. I don't think we're that desperate. We're sat in 16th. I said coming into the season, I thought we'd finish somewhere between 16th and 18th. Right? I thought we'd finish around there. We're about where I thought we'd be. 4 points from 4, considering the start we've had. And I don't think it's awful, and it should have been 5. And probably really should have been 7 or 8. If you look at the fact VTech makes a wonder save, and then the goal disallowed against Leicester. So it's not disastrous. We shouldn't be looking at it and going, we need to bring 18-year-olds through now. I don't think. The only question, I guess, is obviously we don't have any cup games anymore. So when are we going to get in that experience? And that's a question. Just before we go, I just say my laptop is running out, so I need to be pretty quick here. It sounds like we may finally. We got this here. Yeah, a few cameos from Villa. Can't afford to burn them out. I think so, and I think we'll probably see that. There'll be games that will get battered in. And there are games will be 3-0 up with 2 minutes to play, right? That does happen. Throughout the course of a season, you can probably get them. You definitely get them some minutes. You can use them almost. You got a cameo when we were basically losing yesterday. So I don't think it's going to be possible. There are many games still to lose this season, unfortunately. So I'm sure he will get enough first team action. Then you'll have the FA Cup coming back in January, which hopefully Nathan will take slightly more seriously than he took the League Cup this year. But finally, it looks like we are all getting the windfall that we all thought we were all looking for the last 10 years, and that is that Joe Gomez finally sounds like he's going to be on the move to Italy. We won't get confirmation until we find out whether the club who won't be named on this podcast are selling Mark Gay or not to Liverpool, and then that should allow Joe Gomez to depart to AC Milan, which is a fantastic move for him. One of the world's nicest cities, Milano, a wonderful football club, a historical stadium. It's a fantastic move for for another one of our academy graduates. You look at it and you go, look, one of them's playing for Atalanta and still could make a move in Lookman. You've got Conte at Aston Villa, who just played in the Champions League, and you'll have Gomez, who was at Liverpool, won the Champions League and 2 Premier Leagues, and is now heading off to Milan, which isn't a bad selling point for an academy that's not Category 1, I must say. If you're throwing Nick Pope in there at Newcastle, it's really not a bad return over the last sort of 15 years or so. But I think that the question will be, and I think this will be a problem, I think, for ownership in a way, is, because sounds like that's a 20% sell-on fee. I've heard it's actually about 15, right? And I could be wrong, but that's just what I've heard. It's not from anyone that's got particularly great track record of these things, but I've always been told it's about 15%, right? If it goes to 25 million at 15%, that's a lot of money, right? At this level for us, that's 3 million quid about in that sort of range. 2.75 million. If Lookman does go and he stays abroad, we get I think it's called an international training compensation or something, which is basically if a player goes abroad. It's because we had a sell-on fee when Everton sold Lookman to Leipzig, and then it kind of continues. So when Lookman then went to Inter Milan, we got a tiny bit of the fee. It went to Atlanta, we got a tiny bit of the fee, and then when he goes to Inter Milan, we get it's like 1%, right? But that's still about 500 grand if he goes for 50 million, and they want 40, right? So say he goes for 45 million, right? There's a lot of money there, right? You're looking at 3.5-4 million quid. The question is that going to be reinvested in the squad, or are they going to look at that and go, actually, I want to put that towards the losses, not to pay them, but to make the accounts look better for the EFL? That'll be a question as we approach the new rules. Anyway, I think it'd be a great move for Joe. I think it'd be a great move for the club to finally kind of cash in on that. He's had a fantastic career. It's so sad that the injuries seem to have caught up with him. Maybe the sort of slower pace of the game in Italy will allow him to sort of recover some of that form, and maybe in his head he'll have a chance to get into Thomas Tuchel's plan for the World Cup next year. All right. That's going to be it for this edition of the From the Valley Floyd podcast. I sound like Lou Mendez there. I apologize. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for the comments for those of you that have joined me live. And I will come back probably Wednesday or Thursday. It'll be a very, very chilled out pod, just discussing some sort of club news and different things that's going on. We'll have a bit of a review of the final ins, maybe a couple of outs. We'll find out of the summer transfer window. But big questions to answer for Charlton going into this break. Nathan does need to use this 2 weeks, I think, to retool some of the ideas and get us really ready for what is every Charlton fan's least favourite fixture of the season, as the club from down the road heads to SC7. All right. Thank you all, everybody. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Enjoy Super Sunday for those who are watching it. And I'll see you all in the next one.